Welcome back to Curious Kitchen. I'm Cody, and today is episode 2 of stocks. Today, the chicken stock. Now, this does take a few hours to simmer on the stove, not nearly as long as beef stock, so we kind of got to get going. So if you missed the first episode involving vegetable stock, I highly suggest you check that out, just because we have a bunch of methodology and terminologies that I will mention here, but just for, my sake and view's sake, please do check it out. Now, as a refresher, a stock is a more flavorful substitute for water, especially when we're cooking with moist heat methods or using it as a basis for our sauces, soups, and gravies. The stock is the foundation or the trunk of the tree in which we branch off into all of our other things that I mentioned before, all the different methodologies and, adding all overall more flavor and body to a dish. Now, with that all being said, we gotta get this in the stove, so let's get going. So today we are performing the roasted bone methodology of stock making. So our equipment's gonna be a little different, but not too much different compared to the veg stock episode or episode 1. First off, obviously a stock, you need the stock pot. Again, this guy is 16 quarts. This recipe I'm gonna give you yields about a gallon or so. So something that can hold at least, 7 to 8 quarts pretty safely. Next, you'll need obviously a cutting board, whichever one you want, plastic or wood. I'll be using both because I'm going to demo to break down some chicken. Next, you'll need your ladle, some sort of wooden or flat spoon, something that won't scrape up too badly on a roasting pan. A pair of tongs for safety, so don't forget to give your safety clicks. A knife of your choice. Today we're going to rock the cleaver and my fillet knife later. We will also need a scale. This will be by weight. We will utilize both metric and standard. Towards the end of the cooking process, we'll also need a colander or a wire strainer. And if you have cheesecloth from the last episode, we can utilize that here to help strain more of the fine particles away. And if you're gonna make a sachet d'épices or bouquet garni. Next, and most importantly, you'll need some sort of pan to roast on. You don't need to have a nonstick. This is sort of nonstick, but this is what I bought from Ross. This is what I have. Now, if you don't have a roasting pan, that's totally fine. What's more important is that we have some sort of a pan that is oven safe that has a lip to it. We are roasting chicken bones, so juices and fats and stuff are gonna roll off something that doesn't have a lip. So a casserole dish would be helpful. Obviously you may need more depending on how many bones you're gonna be using for this recipe. Or a rolled, or jelly rolled pan. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect, but having this lip here will reduce any sort of liquid or fats getting on the element in your oven and starting a fire, or open flames with fat doesn't really work out too well. But with all that, let's talk about the actual ingredients for today. I almost forgot to mention, I'm terribly sorry, make sure you have some heat-proof containers that can safely hold around a gallon of hot liquid that can go in your refrigerator, and make sure you have something to carry and move hot pans and pots. I just use some regular towels, but an oven mitt will work just as well. First, into our ingredients. We will need our mirepoix. As you remember, it is 1 part celery to 1 part carrot to 2 parts onion. What does that mean for today? Celery, we will need 4 ounces or 113 grams. Carrot, we'll need 4 ounces or 113 grams. And onions, we will need 8 ounces or 278 grams. Now for aromatics, we will need 10 to 15 peppercorns. I know I said black in the last one. This is a medley. Whatever works for you, just don't end up with a bunch of green peppercorns or something like that. Garlic cloves, 3 to 9 of them, peeled and crushed. I'm only using 7 or 8 here today. Parsley. Now, I usually buy this by the bunch, but for today's recipe, it only calls for 6 to 7 stems. Again, I'll pick all these leaves clean, I'll dry them, I'll use all the stems because I'm not super worried about it. Thyme, we will need 10 to 15 stems, peeled away, cleaned, again, save the leaves and dry them out. Finally, for the chicken stock, we actually need the chicken itself. You get all that? I know it's probably grossing out some people, but for today's recipe, I'll be using 8 pounds of chicken carcasses, bones. These chickens have had the bones cleaned away from their thigh, and the neck bones are inside as well. So, if you do not have all that, or you do not know how to break down a bird, I will demonstrate that. So, give me a moment. I'm gonna get a fillet knife and a cutting board set up, and I'll show you how to break down a bird. No, for those of you who are already masters of butchering the bird, you can go ahead and skip ahead. If you're joining me for the chicken butchering, there will be a more in-depth video on butchering birds and more methods of doing it, but this is kind of a short and simple one. First things first, make sure your hands are washed and you have a clean sink environment. Using cold water, we're going to clean this bird away from all the juices, leftover and leftover blood bits, etc., etc. As you can see, the bag's a little juicy in there. So with your fillet knife, go ahead and open up your bag. If you can use a chef knife, go for it. Whatever works for you to get the bird butchered down. Now, everything this bird touches, everything your hand touches when you're touching raw chicken, treat it as if you're handling radioactive material. You don't want cross-contamination on anything if we can help it. So, sometimes inside the birds, you will find a satchel, or I guess in here, we'll find the neck of the bird, or the chicken neck. We can save this, put it on the sheet tray over here that I have set up, and dive in. So here, we have giblets, we have like livers, lungs, etc., etc. You can save that, it is edible, but we don't need that for today. Sometimes these come in a little satchel inside the bird, but I don't feel anything else, which is good. So obviously this is the back of the bird, and you have the tail fat there. So we want to rinse it under cold water. Rinse water through the top of the bird where the neck would be. So if you look at the bird, this is where the neck would be. And make sure the water runs clear. See? Now we're running nice and clear. Let it drain a little bit. And back onto the sheet tray to isolate everything. Use the back of your hand, whatever you need to do to turn off your sink. Get your hands washed up. And again, don't let anything touch the sink until it's been properly cleaned and sanitized. Now let's get this thing cut down. So with your fillet knife or chef knife, whatever you're comfortable with, go ahead and grab your bird. Now, the way we're going to do this is first we're going to get rid of the legs and the thighs. So with the bird on its side, like this, you can see where the thigh separates from the rest of it. There's like a layer of skin here that shows, and you can feel the back of the spine of the bird, and around here you can feel where the joints are. So our goal is to cut down through the joints and out the end as clean as possible. So we cut down like so you see it separate, then you get to the spine and you follow the spine until your knife kind of stops, and you can pop the joint, if you can hear it, pop the joint and follow your knife in between that joint, keeping as close as you can to the spine of the bird. Now you have your thigh, and we can trim all this skin off in a second. So there's your leg thigh. We'll repeat the process on the other side. Some people like to take off the wings first. There's many ways to skin or clean a bird. But so first, again, down, clean it away from the rib cage itself. We follow the knife to the spine. The knife gets stuck. We pop the joint. The knife follows the joint and goes out the end of the bird. And sometimes your knife will be really sharp and you'll get like a bone like that. We will clean that away in a moment. Right now we're getting the bird separated. So, depending how deep you went, you'll see, we get rid of this fat. You see now that this is kind of the interior like flap of the bird. We can cut down, and now you see the spine and then the rib cage right here. You can see the rib cage down in there. So now I am going to lop off the top of these wings. So you cut down that center membrane, we pop the joint so we can find out where it's at. This one actually broke the bone instead of popped the joint. That's okay. Now we have the wing. Other side, wing. Going down this center piece here, this center here, and this joint. We cut down, we pop the joint, and we follow the knife through where the joint or the bone separate from each other. Now we are left with the chicken breast. Now you can pull the skin tight, so if you want to retain the chicken skin if you want. If you don't, we can take it away later. Now, the rib cage runs like this, and then down the center we call the keel bone, or I think in human terms we call it the sternum. So we're going to run our knife straight down that keel bone to expose either side, and you'll start feeling it. You can see it here, you can hear it. That's the bone. So we run our knife along the bone all the way to the end. Some people take out the wishbone that's sitting right here, but we're not going to worry about that. We're going to run it down the keel bone until our knife stops. Now our knife has hit the rib cage. We're going to take, and our knife will follow that rib cage down until we remove the breast. So using the tip or the top of your knife here, we're going to slowly scrape away the bone from the thigh, keeping your thumb well out of the way, and your knife can just follow that rib cage down. I don't know if you can see it very well, but we're going to follow that rib cage down. If it takes multiple passes, that's okay. No one's perfect. I'm not that great at butchering birds, but practice makes perfect. Now, I found the bottom of the bone there, so now I know I'm there where the wing attaches to the rest of the chicken. So I'm either going to feel for the joint, such as right here, or I can, again, pop it to try to find it. The joint's right here. I'm going to tip my knife in there, work my way through it, and a clean cut away. Now I have the chicken breast, and we would call this the airline breast when we retain the top of the wing here. It's called the airline. Now, if we want to, we can hold up the chicken breast like this. We can see where the bone is here and cut around it, and we just have the leftover chicken breast itself. The other side gets a little tricky because obviously you have less weight over here, so be very careful. Go ahead, again, follow the keel bone down. Hopefully I'm in frame. Follow the keel bone down to when the knife kind of stops and you feel the rib cage. And follow the knife down the rib cage. Now if you get really good at this, or I used to be really good at this, you can butcher a whole bird in less than a few minutes and have a really clean carcass. Like, I left a good chunk of meat on there, so I'm sure I would fail in a lot of other chef's eyes, but I did leave a good chunk of meat. It's okay, just clean it up, save it, utilize it, and again, we have our airline breast, and all this extra fat and such can be cleaned off. As for the carcass, we can get rid of this tail piece here. That tail is just straight fat. We don't want that in our stock. Now, this is kind of gross, but it's a great way to kind of store this carcass in the freezer. We crack it, and where the vertebrae split, we're going to run the knife through it, and we can shove the vertebrae back into the bird, like so, and freeze it for next time. Now, to process the thigh and leg, which I'll do really quickly, like I said, there's a piece of bone fragment here. The best thing you can do, hopefully this is focusing, is run your knife underneath. So, run your knife underneath that bone fragment, and then draw it through one way, and then draw it through the other way. And now you got rid of the fat and that bone meat. Now, if you don't want all this extra skin, you can just place it down like so and trim what skin you don't want. You can save the skin, you can fry it, you can grill it, you can put it in a stew. And then if you want to separate the thigh from the leg here, again, there's a fat line here that you can see. This fat line is where the joint is at. So we can pop the joint like so and follow where that went, or you can just follow the fat line and hope you hit the joint. Now, I may have a little butchered out a little bit, but that's okay. For the leg, set it aside. For the thigh, now, the thigh has this central bone still we want to get out. You can see that fat line there. That shows you where the bone is at. So, we split down the bone, the tip of our knife like so, and then we follow the bone down, scraping along the side of the bone with your knife until you get to where you think it kind of bottoms out, and you do that to both sides. And this can get really tricky, and you can start losing a lot of extra meat doing this, so it takes a lot of practice. Now, with one side of the bone open like so, see how it's kind of split away? I'm going to run my knife under the bone and out, and then run my knife around the top of the bone to release any tendons or any bit of meat that's still on there. Take the back of my knife, if you can see it, like that. Take the back of your knife and scrape the bone down. And then cut away the extra bit of bone you don't want. And because you'll have some cartilage up top, don't worry, just clean it away. Make sure there's no bits, no blood, nothing like that. And again, not the best butchering job, but I mean, come on. There is your boneless thigh. Again, one more, without popping the joint. Oop, that's the breast. Without popping the joint, chicken thigh, like so. I don't want this extra skin on here, so I run my knife through it, like so. Get off. I look over, I see where the joint, the fat line is for that joint. I can even feel where the joint's at. I take my knife through and I cut away that joint. All of a sudden, bird is butchered. Now for the bone again, tip of the knife, run down the center where you feel that bone is at, and then run your knife down either side of the bone. My cat is so confused as to what I am doing right now. Run your knife through, expose that top of the bone, run your knife along it to let all the meat be free of it and the tendon. I didn't cut all the way through that time. And push down with the back of your knife and then cut away said bone. Now you have a boneless chicken thigh. And if you want to take the skin off, just literally just yank the skin off and then cut away the excess. I think that pretty much covers the basis of it. Again, the chicken breast, just do what you want with it. But now, sanitize, clean, and let's move on to the next step. Now, before I move too far ahead, I kind of want to touch on the chicken carcasses. And I know this recipe is not super realistic for you to have 8 pounds of chicken carcasses just lying around in your house. You know, you may only have 4 or 3. It is perfectly okay to use this same recipe, but cut the amount of chicken carcasses in half. Increase some mirepoix by the standard ratio of the 1 part to 1 part to 2 parts. Or just do it as is. You'll lose out on some flavor and some body, which is fine. It's what you want it to be. Remember, these are your recipes at the end of the day. I do want to touch on something that I think I need to nip in the bud here, especially when I'm talking about these yields that are like 1 gallon at a time or 2 gallons at a time. A gallon of stock is 128 fluid ounces, correct? So let's say you have a stew recipe. You make this, you have a stew recipe that calls for a gallon of stock. That stew recipe yields 2 gallons or 256 fluid ounces of finished product. Now, what is 256 ounces? What yield, what's a serving size, right? So a standard soup or stew would be 6 to 8 ounces, fluid ounces of, you know, finished in a bowl on the table for you ready to eat. Let's say you have 256 of it, or 2 gallons finished. That means divided by 8 fluid ounces per portion size generously is 32 portions. Let's say you have a 4-person household, right? So we divide that by 4, right? That means that each person would have to eat 8 portions of that stew to equate to 256 fluid ounces of finished product. So remember, utilize what you need, and remember that these recipes are just ratios and that they can be taken down or even taken up if you're doing a big batch. Let's say you're hosting, you know, Thanksgiving this year and you need 4 gallons of finished stock, just up the ratios. But I will say, buying whole birds, at least for me and, you know, my household, it's really more, how can I say, cost effective. Whole birds are usually cheaper. I can save the carcasses. You know, every, you know, month I butcher 2 birds. In 2 months I have 4 carcasses. I can do a half batch of stock. So just, I wanted to kind of nip that in the bud, keep in mind. But for now, let's keep going. All right, now get your oven set to about 400 degrees. And if you have a convection oven, go ahead and turn your fans on and get them roaring. Get your chicken bones, 8 pounds, 4 pounds, whatever you decide to go with, kind of evenly distributed between either 1 or 2 of your roasting pans, your casserole dish, or whatever you decide to go in. And we're gonna get these roasting until they're GBD, golden brown and delicious. Now with that, let's cut up the mirepoix and get our aromatics ready. Remember, a stable cutting board is a safe cutting board. Make sure you have a wet towel of some sort. Get some friction so your board doesn't roll around. Grab your chef knife, cleaver, santoku, whatever you wanted to go for today. And let's start peeling these guys, peeling the carrots, and get your celery cleaned out and get our mirepoix put together. As a reminder, when it comes to working with rounded vegetables like this, to make sure we work with a flat surface. So cutting off that root of the vegetable or root of the onion creates a flat, stable surface for us to cut down on. So again, flat, stable. Knife goes down. Don't forget your claw. I'll demonstrate that more in a second. But get these guys peeled. All right, with your scale nearby, or however you're measuring your parts, get these onions cut down. Remember, unlike veg stock, this will go a lot longer. This is gonna go for 3 to 6 hours, so we want a bigger cut of vegetable. The bigger they are, the longer it will take for them to break down and start getting waterlogged and bitter the stock. So for the chicken stock, I'm literally going to half my onions like you saw before, then I'm going to quarter them like so. And we only need 8 ounces finished. Now, as a reminder to keep your claw. As you saw in the other episode, or the first episode, remember, have your fingers curled like this, so your knuckle of your top hand there, top of your hand, guides the knife down safely. We want to practice knife safety. Got it? Now, cut. Cut. Bam. There's 8 ounces there. I didn't need that many onions. Carrots. Stem. Top. Off. And again, big chunks of carrots, keeping the claw. Claw is stabilizing the carrot for me. That actually may have been a little too small, but it's okay. And that's enough carrots here. I'm just gonna use them all. Celery, same thing, keeping the claw in place. Cut down the vegetables, not your finger. And then these 2 should do. Do not toss these in the stock pot yet. We need to get our aromatics together, and we're actually going to roast these, or I guess saute them in the open pan. Now, for the aromatics, like I mentioned, garlic, peppercorns, 2 to 3 bay leaves. I didn't mention the ingredients, but if I forgot, here, I'm mentioning it now, I promise. Bay leaves, 2 to 3. I have some big ones. Don't forget your parsley, and again, just clean the stems off of these guys, clean the leaves off of the stems here, put the stems in your stock. Same going with your thyme. And at this point, if those of you who want to make your bouquet garni or sachet d'épices, you go back to the first episode if you want to get more on that. Now is the time to do so while your bones roast. We're gonna check on these bones after about 30 or so minutes after the ovens come up to temperature. And again, we want that golden brown delicious, but for now, we're going to prep and get our mise en place in place. Now, before I cut to that montage of me picking the herbs and gathering the aromatics, I mentioned the word or the phrase mise en place. Mise en place is what a lot of us in the kitchens live and die by. Mise en place is essentially having everything in place, or everything having a place. Right now, we have our aromatics, our mirepoix set aside, ready to go when the chicken is done. That is mise en place. Mise en place is the difference between a 40-minute pickup time for chicken Alfredo and a 20-minute take time for chicken Alfredo. It's having everything ready to go. So, now it's been about 35 or so minutes. You can see the bones are starting to get that golden brown, but they're not nearly done. I want these to be really rich. So go ahead and take your tongs and flip over the carcasses, move around some of the bones, try to expose more of the uncooked or uncaramelized surface area there, and get this back in the oven. Check it for, give it another like 30 or so minutes and come in and check it. Again, you really want a deep golden brown, and you'll start seeing juices and fats down there. That's perfectly okay and fine. We're gonna use that and take care of that when we start with the mirepoix. Can you hear it sizzling? Yeah, that is just about there, golden brown delicious. I'm okay with those. You kind of hear them crunch and the bones kind of fall apart. Now you'll see when you get this out that there's a lot of fat down there, and we're gonna have to get rid of that because we don't want a bunch of excess fat in our stock. But for now, let's get this on the stovetop. Now, be very careful. Obviously, your pan is really hot. Go ahead and get your bones out of here. So let all the excess fat and stuff drip off and get these bones into your stock pot. Now, obviously with the name in the roasting bone method, we are roasting the bones of the chicken or beef or pork or duck or whatever stock you want to make it with. Now the roasting process not only adds a great depth of flavor to your finished product, it also eliminates more fat as opposed to the blanch bone method, which we'll talk about, I believe, in the fish stock episode. So all this extra fat that dripped out, all this extra water, we don't want this in the stock because fat is not good for a stock. It could muddle the mixture, it could make it hard to make a proper sauce, and it could potentially separate a sauce. So we're going to drain this out, but please, for the sake of your plumber or your landlord or for your own home if you own it, please do not dump this fat down the sink. Get a ceramic or heat-proof container and get it drained that way. I will say at this point, make sure you get your fans turned on. Open a window because it's going to get loud, it's going to get sweaty, and it's going to get very steamy in here. So maybe also tend to your fire alarm. Now that I've drained all the fat off, or excess fat off like there, again, let that congeal and throw it into your garbage. Don't put it down your drain. This is our prize we want to get. This is what we call in the industry fond, or the foundation, in I think a little translation from French. This fond is all free and extra flavor. This fond is the caramelized sugars and proteins that came from the chicken bones. So we are going to take our mirepoix and roast it, or essentially saute it in the same roasting pan to kind of break up all that extra fond and get it into our stock. Now, it won't get all of it, so we're going to perform a de-glaze. A de-glaze is when you add liquid such as wine or water to a hot pan. When the metal of that pan contracts and the quick evaporation of the water will steam off and help release all these particles. So, like I said, make sure your fans are running, a window's open or something, or tend to your fire alarm because it's going to get very steamy in here. Now, luckily for me, my pan will work on my burners here. So I'm going to do the stovetop side, in which I'm going to turn the heat on, start the caramelizing process. If you are not so lucky, go ahead and take your pan with the mirepoix, put it back in the oven, and every 10 minutes or so give it a good stir until you get nice caramelized flavor, or a little bit of, and the fond comes off of it. You could also deglaze in the stove as well. So follow what I'm doing, but imagine, if you will, doing it in the oven if you don't have access to, a stovetop. Is this dangerous? Yeah, potentially. Do I really care? No, not really. It's for the sake of flavor and for the sake of the video. So I'm bringing this up about, I don't know, medium-high heat, whatever that is on your stove, on my big burner here, and we're going to start this cooking process. The mirepoix goes in. You can probably already hear it going. Don't worry, I'm a professional. I'm used to sticking my hand in hot pans all the time. But if you want to break up your onion, you can at this point. And just let that sit there and kind of caramelize. Now, if the bottom gets a little too burnt too quickly because the fond's not coming off, we can go ahead and deglaze early. It's not going to ruin our product. You see how my flat wooden spoon is allowing me to kind of scrape away the bottom, but it's not letting it, I'm not scraping the metal away. I'll rotate this because I only have the one burner. It's getting on and stuck to my onions, to the carrots, to the celery. A little early. You can see we're just barely starting to get that caramelized color on there. We're not trying to cook the vegetables all the way through by any means because we're going to have it hot for 6 hours or so. But if you end up roasting this, you definitely want to be sure not to overdo it. Your carrots shouldn't be tender. They should still be really firm. You hear that? Really firm. Alright, so I'm getting a little dark here, and I don't want to burn anything, so I'm going to decoupage. So stick with me. A little bit of water, a little bit of liquid. Not as dramatic as I thought it was going to be, but you know, I am using this weird glass top stove. So this water is going to let us scrape all this fond off and suspend it in the liquid. And then as soon as it's all scraped away, we're going to drop it into our stock pot. Now, this is also a great method to clean something. So let's say you accidentally burn something to the bottom of the pan, or God forbid you left it on the stove too long and the burnt bits after you've already cooked your food is, you know, still sitting on a heated plate or burner below. A deglaze will help really break that apart. But again, be really careful with what pans you deglaze in. The really thick steel and aluminum pots I use, or I featured in the very first episode, are great for this because they won't turn on you. They won't, start curling on you. It won't start deglazing the pan. But these thinner, kind of cheapo ones that you find, or even the ones that you can just bend yourself, those will instantly deglaze. They won't sit flat. It's just not good. So with all of this deglazed away, you can see how much sugar's on there because I stuck to my spoon. I want all that fond. Now, that deglazing done, kill the heat. I'm going to put this guy into this box. If there's little bits left over, it's okay. Add some more water to it. Make sure everything gets scraped away. Be careful not to burn yourself or burn the fond that's at the bottom, and throw it into your stock pot. And let's add our water to this mirepoix and chicken bones in the pot. Now we add our cold water. Now, I mentioned cold water in the vegetable stock episode, and I promised I would talk about it and its importance, and this is a perfect time to talk about its importance here. So I'm going in with quarts of cold water. If I get it all in the pot, holy cow. And if for those of you who are not using this recipe exactly, or not using a weights measurement by parts, just like in the veg stock episode, when you're adding your water, go ahead and add enough water to cover the bones and vegetables at the original height by 2 inches of cold water. Now, why cold water? Why is this so important? You mentioned it last time. So, first things first, the cold water helps to temper the whole pot. It allows everything to be at the same temperature as opposed to uneven heating, as in the mirepoix that just went in fresh and hot while the chicken bones have already dropped 10 or 15 degrees or a few degrees Celsius. That temperature equilibrium, or having that temperature even, means that convection currents, remember those things I talked about, can more easily be started, and there's no weird pockets of hot or cold. It's all the same temperature. So everything can rise at the same time and create a nice raft. Secondly, the cold water allows the fats that we couldn't get off and other undesirable bits that float to the top, make it really easy for depoulaging. All those fats congeal together and come to the top. You can kind of see here, maybe, let me see if I can zoom in for you guys. You can see some of that fat already starting to create a film here. And that's why we have to perform a depoulage. Now, there is some science that talks about, protein absorption in water temperature and differences. I believe the absorption rate for whey and soy protein was tested to be optimal at 40 to 60 Celsius. And as for collagen, it doesn't really matter since that's our main protein here, because collagen doesn't dissolve into liquids until about 120 Celsius, I believe. No, wait, sorry. 120 Fahrenheit, 120 to 140 Fahrenheit. And collagen, such as gelatin, they're the same thing. Gelatin is just cooked collagen, is something we want. That is the body. That's what gives, chicken stock or beef stock, that robustness to it. And it actually is a part of the thickening process when you're doing sauces like demi-glaces. So, always use cold water. Now, over whatever medium heat is on your stove, on your big burner or appropriate burner for your stock pot. Let's bring this up to a simmer, and then we can add the aromatics. Good. Just like the veg stock, you can see some of the foam coming up to the top. And that foam also has a layer of fat underneath it. So we need to perform dépoulage. Now, as a refresher, dépoulage, essentially we're plunging a ladle just below the surface area of the water to get all these impurities, scum, fat, this random foam off the top. Now, it is okay if you do not get all of the fat off the top. It is perfectly fine. It will congeal when the stock is chilled, because fat is not water soluble and is less dense than the stock around it, so it will naturally float to the top. So don't fret if you don't get every single bit of fat out of there. There are ways to get around it. Now, you'll probably have to perform a dépoulage probably every, 30 minutes or so for the first 3 or so hours of cooking. In total cook time today will be between 3 and 6 hours. So in that time, more fat will come to the top, other things will congeal, the raft will keep moving. Now, if you can see, the raft has formed again, and we do not want to break it. As best as we can, just want to gently push down on it. Now, unlike veg stock, chicken stock is definitely not on easy mode, because it can easily be ruined if you start stirring or boiling your stock. Will it ruin the flavor necessarily? Probably not. Would it ruin the clarity of it? Yes. Yes, it will. And that clarity can mess up the color and the contrast of what you're going to have to do, or what you use it for, such as sauce-wise. But if let's say you do boil this over. Let's say for some reason you do boil it. There are ways to clarify, to strain, to get away from stuff. But let's try to avoid that, because I don't want to make that episode just yet. After you perform as much dépoulage as you can, getting away all the extra fat, all the extra scum, we're going to add our aromatics. No. With your dépoulage complete for now, again, we want to do this a few times, we can go ahead and add our aromatics. All of our stems, our bay leaves, peppercorns, garlic, and my little spice concoction here, which I've mentioned before, my juniper, clove, and star anise. You do not have to add these if you do want to. This is just what I prefer in my stocks. Now, again, if you really feel compelled to, go ahead and just drop some water over your herbs. It's okay. Again, try not to break the raft. Evaporation from the stock will begin to moisten the top of these, so you don't have to push these down into the raft, but if you want to, feel free to. At this point, if you have a bouquet garni or a sachet d'épices, go ahead and add it. This, again, will go for 3 to 6 hours. We're going to check this every half hour. Again, make sure you keep an eye on your stove, because we don't want this to boil. This is not Odin. We do not want this to go over. We want a simmer, not a poach, not a boil. I'll see you in a few hours. So it's been about 3 hours, close to 3.5 hours. Let's give this a taste. Now, my clarity is not perfect, but it's not horrible. Plenty of little particles of fat. I don't know if you can kind of see that with the camera. So, that's hot. That's good. I can really taste the chicken, but I really can't taste much of the aromatics yet. So I'm gonna let this go for about another hour or so. You can see the evaporation. Now, if you're really worried about too much of the stock evaporating away, you can add some like hot water to it. Just a little bit on the top and a little bit at a time, because you don't want it to completely stop the convection currents. So if you do add water, maybe crank the heat up for a few minutes until it gets back to a nice little simmer like this. But other than that, let's go for another hour or so. So about 4 hours later, stock has reduced nicely, and we will give it a quick taste test. That's good, perfect. I can taste the chicken, I can taste the carrots, I can taste my aromatics. So again, get your gloves out or whatever, because this is going to be hot. And let's get this strained and cooled down. Remember, if you don't have a wire strainer and you want to get a finer strain or get more of the particles out, put a layer of cheesecloth folded over 1 or 2 times, just to get all the little particles. Now, unlike the veg stock, we don't really want to dump it. Like I said, we kind of want to keep that body of raft down there as best we can. So take your time. It's okay if things fall out. Prepare for a facial, because you will get a chicken stock facial from doing this. Oh, see, didn't want to do that, but luckily it didn't fall right in and just immediately muddle the mixture. Nice and strained, nice and strained. Now, there is a clarifying method called, there is a method of clarification that results in a consommé. Now, a consommé is literally just a fortified clear stock, which we may touch on. So even if your stock isn't perfectly clear and a little cloudy, it's not the worst thing in the world, because we have methodologies to deal with that. And again, make sure you feed your commis or your kitchen help the leftover bones and mirepoix. So, we go from our hot container. Yeah, it's a little cloudy, but that's okay. Just get your heat-proof containers out. Let me adjust the camera here. It looks like I'm missing one of my containers, so I'll actually have to use my roasting pan as somewhere to cool down and get it poured in. And I actually have to get this back on the stove because my wife wants chicken noodle soup. Now, make sure that when you cool this down, like I mentioned in the veg stock video, we don't want more than 2 inches of liquid, because if we have too much liquid, it takes longer for it to cool down. We want it to get below 40 degrees Fahrenheit or 4 degrees Celsius in less than 6 hours to help prevent bacteria and anything else from developing and ruining your beautiful stock. Excuse me. So, get this in the fridge, and I get this other half back on the stove. Your stock put away and your bones in mirepoix, probably chilling for a few hours because you don't want to melt your garbage can. I want to thank you for watching and congratulate you if this is your first time ever making a chicken stock. If it's a refresher, I hope I was educational and helpful, and if this is your first time ever, I hope you take this foundational or these foundational recipes, take and make them your own. Just like I have done with adding my extra berries or clove or star anise. Make these recipes your own. Tailor them to your own palate, your own family, your own household, whatever it may be. Now, with all that being said, I'd like to thank you again for watching. I have been Cody. This is Curious Kitchen. And remember, keep your palates open and your knives sharp.